Salutations, one and all, and welcome to RWBY Revisited. In this installment, let us have an examination of Remnant's unique element, dust, and how it affects the world. Please be aware that spoilers for all seasons will follow, and any material revealed or expounded upon in outside sources will not be weighted as heavily as that scene in the show. So, dust is a critical component to the setting of RWBY. Most of Remnant's technology is powered by dust, and it's used in a great many applications. It's used as fuel for transportation, ammunition for weapons, and even as a power source for appliances. To put it bluntly, dust functions as Remnant's equivalent for many various technologies that we have in the real world. To that end, we should begin by assessing where dust comes from. In its raw state, dust exists in crystals of various sizes, sometimes found on the surface of Remnant, but more often than not found underground, necessitating it being mined from the earth. I will say that it's odd that this substance is referred to as dust when it more often than not exists as a crystalline structure rather than fine particles. That would be like us referring to iron as ingot, naming it after its processed form rather than its naturally occurring one. Back on topic though. One has to wonder how dust deposits are located. Surface nodes could indicate the presence of more dust underground, though that may not always be the case. And there may be no indication at all that there could be a wealth of dust beneath one's feet. We use things like geological surveying to try to detect ores and minerals today, and in ancient times our ancestors had to rely on things like finding surface deposits or discolorizations in the soil and plant life anomalies, but it's unclear what remnants people use to determine if dust may be present. Around the entrance to the mine in Season 7, there's little to no indication at all that dust is present, though it may have already been removed. Though once it is discovered that dust can be found, what then? We have a bit of a conundrum that we don't see addressed in the show. In that same location, the Aesops, Teams Ruby and Juniper, and Crow need to be careful when engaging in combat, as the dust is shown to be volatile and will explode if struck. What's more, this can cause a chain reaction with nearby dust crystals, resulting in the entire mine detonating. Indeed, this was purposely triggered in the following season to assist in launching Amity Coliseum. But here's the kicker. Mining is not a gentle operation. Excavating rock is rough work, and if the dust crystals are so unstable that dropping or striking one could set it off, how then is it removed? Machinery would certainly proc an explosion, and even hand tools would be risky, as you would never know if a crystal was behind the rock you're digging up. And while we're on the subject of that mine, it's stated that it was abandoned. It's briefly mentioned in dialogue that there was an accident at one point, though details are scarce on that matter. And while such an incident would be tragic, it's hard to imagine it realistically closing shop when there's still such a vast quantity of dust to be harvested. The Schnee Dust Company would obviously still want profits from the dust.
I will not part with a single coin.
But more than that, as stated prior, Remnant bases almost all of its technology on dust. It would be completely illogical to simply call it quits when there's such a massive amount of the substance down there. Especially since there's passing information that vacuo used to be the primary source of dust until it was stripped of it. So this confirms that dust is a non-renewable resource, meaning that once it's gone, it's gone.
Oh no! It's all gone. What am I going to do?
But Atlas is a difficult environment to live in the best of times, given the tundra. Mining would be even more difficult. It's strange that there aren't larger operations in more mild climates like Vale and Mistral. They went from extreme heat to extreme cold with their locations. We do see that there are numerous gravity dust crystals of incredible size in Mistral, as Weiss fought several Lancers there, but there appears to be no effort to collect these. With all that's there to be claimed, I fail to see why the SDC or other interested parties haven't hired some huntsman teams to clear out the area to mine them. I also wouldn't be surprised if piracy was frequently attempted with dust shipments, considering the value of dust. Snatching it for yourself to sell would be quite lucrative if you could pull it off.
Take what you can. Give nothing back.
Okay, but with that out of the way, let's look at some of the applications of dust, shall we? In the very first episode of the show, we see the interior of a dust shop. Given how prevalent dust is, this may be a sort of mashup of a general store with a side of ammunition, reminiscent of what you would see in the Wild West. Inside, we can see what appear to be either cardboard boxes or brown paper bags containing color-coded dust. It's a little difficult to tell with the early rendering engine. There are also large glass tubes on the wall that allow dust to be dispensed. It's interesting to note that these don't appear to be quite as unstable as those shown in the mine, as they do not create an explosion when subjected to even mild kinetic energy. A short time later, Weiss is shown to have dust in a powder-like form in glass vials, which also doesn't explode when dropped. This would seem to indicate that the substance is processed somehow, though it isn't known what this entails. This procedure appears to make it more stable, which must be a godsend. Otherwise, entire buildings might just explode at a moment's notice.
The casserole!
Season 3 even shows us that the dust crystals in Amity Arena can be broken off and used without incident, even directly applied to the gear characters have. Mercury even unleashed a whirlwind of the stuff, which orbited the target before striking at once. I still have no earthly idea how that was managed. In Season 5, we also witness Remnant's equivalent of a gas station, and I suspect that the pumps must function similarly to the glass tubes seen in the dust shop from before. But we also don't know just how many types of dust there are. We do witness its crystals in various colors and shades, though it isn't always clear which ones these are, and there have been some discrepancies throughout the show's run. Most notably though, dust is used in ammunition. This is the most frequent context in which we see it, and it has been depicted to be able to freeze targets, inflict burns, deliver electrical shocks, and more. Though speaking of discrepancies, there is another. In the World of Remnant video about dust, it's stated to be triggered by aura, and while this may be one option, it certainly isn't the only one, as their volatile raw crystals certainly don't need aura to detonate, and machinery uses dust as well, and it does not possess aura. At least, I certainly hope that an oven isn't like Penny, with a soul and all. Even firearms, both the ones used by humans and Faunus, as well as those used by the Atlesian mechs, do not require aura to be used, and they function off dust. So clearly, this explanation is not sufficient. In a similar vein, though, Hazel was shown to pierce dust crystals through his skin and muscle tissue and use their power directly. So this does open up the possibility of this being done by anyone. Remember that this was not his semblance. that merely removed his ability to feel pain. While it obviously wouldn't be a pleasant experience, the option exists to wound oneself to temporarily gain powerful elemental abilities. Honestly, I'm surprised that Yang doesn't try this, considering that would also potentially power up her semblance. It would at least give her elemental blasts on top of it. It's also briefly mentioned that dust can be infused into clothing, but I don't know how much of a sound strategy that would be. You wouldn't want it being set off on its own, and it seems like that would harm you more than anything else. Some characters even use dust as the primary component of their weapons, such as Raven and Velvet. Raven uses blades made out of dust, while Velvet mimics weapons with hard light dust. I've stated before, though, that this is far too gimmicky for practical use, as these break after only a few uses, necessitating that the wielder carries a considerable amount of dust on their person, which just isn't feasible. And speaking of hard light dust, that is not a naturally occurring type of dust, as evidenced by Cordovan stating that surely you knew Atlas was the father of hard light dust. This means that either different types of dust can be combined to make something new, or new varieties can be synthesized from existing variants. This type of dust is frequently seen in Atlas, from providing shields to even creating prison cells, though I have to question its viability. Weapons made from it break quite easily, so unless some different approach is taken in its creation or deployment, one would think that Crow, Robin, and Watts could just break out of their cells by hitting it enough. This does call into question what can be achieved by combining dust, as its base form seems to only be based on an element found in nature. But what are the limits to combining dust types? Could you combine gravity dust and fire dust to trap your enemies inside a flaming singularity? Can you freeze an opponent in place while simultaneously slashing them apart with high-pressure jets of water? What about making an electrical tornado with lightning and wind dust? Not showing experimentation like this is a bit of a missed opportunity. Dust can even be used in Semblances, most frequently seen with Weiss, who is seldom without it. This allows her glyphs to take on elemental properties, and Blake has on occasion made use of it as well with her shadow duplicates. It is interesting to note, though, that it seems a character only needs to have it on their person to trigger these effects, rather than deploying it through some means, as both Weiss and Blake only had it loaded into their weapons, which are not required to generate a semblance. With this in mind, hypothetically, RWBY could unleash vortexes of elemental energy, though we have seen no such occurrences. But we also have another question. Where did dust come from? In Jin's narration of Ozma and Salem's story, she makes a point to mention that dust did not exist alongside the first iteration of humanity. This is a Chekhov's gun. For those unaware, that means that everything mentioned in a story must be necessary, with anything that's just filler being removed. Long story short, if a gun is mentioned, then it must be used at some point. Assuming that the writing isn't completely inept, then this has to be for a reason. Now, this might not necessarily be the case, but the God of Light was shown to put particular emphasis on the rules that he and his brother had put in place. And if he wanted to hold to those rules, then he would have to abide by the law of the conservation of mass. That means that matter cannot be created or destroyed. It simply changes its form. When water is boiled, it isn't destroyed. It's just converted into a gas, that being steam. So when humanity was vaporized, it would stand to reason that the components of their bodies wouldn't just vanish. Over thousands or hundreds of thousands of years, that could have coalesced into the dust crystals we see in modern Remnant. That would explain the substance's almost magical properties. Because while the show does not define dust as magic, in terms of fiction writing, dust would fall under a magic system, one of several in this show, standing alongside Semblances, the god's power, the entirety of the Ever After, and magic itself. It's also possible that it could have come from the moon fragments shown raining down onto Remnant, but I would deem that as much less likely. What's more, we're also informed that the Faunus are a new addition to this cycle. While that could be a coincidence, I don't like coincidences, especially not when we're given these two pieces of information in rapid succession to one another. If humanity had to evolve again, then perhaps dust and its residual magical energy had an effect on the developing primates, perhaps causing the traits of the Faunus to form. I know it's a long shot, but those two pieces of information were given in rapid fire, and both are unique to this second iteration of humanity. It has also been mentioned that dust loses its abilities if it leaves Remnant's atmosphere. This ensures that humans and Faunus cannot leave Remnant. The gods did have monolithic egos, and one possible line of thought would be that they did not wish for humans to travel to other planets and possibly forget about them and ignore their rule. If dust truly is a fossil fuel made of ancient humans, then this could be a holdover. But these are the uses and potential uses of dust for the side of our protagonists. What about Salem, though? Salem has shown that she can use dust for her own purposes as well, as Monstra was modified by embedding humongous gravity dust crystals into its hide. Yet this was the only instance of such a thing occurring. While this would be a waste on smaller and more inexperienced Grimm, it's stated that Grimm do not die of age, and will live on until they are killed, leading to those that have lasted for decades or longer to be far larger, more powerful, and have increased cunning than their lesser brethren. Some Grimm have innate supernatural powers, but having some standard Grimm sporting dust crystals would augment Salem's forces and make them more than simple fodder. Given her more open attacks in Season 7 and onwards, this would be decidedly valuable. These units could function as shock troops for others. Imagine Beowulfs unleashing blasts of ice, a Deathstalker creating walls of fire, or a Nevermore unleashing lightning breath. If more than one wyvern exists, then it too could have upgrades, making it even more fearsome than what we saw in Season 3. Ultimately, we know remarkably little about dust, which is a bit disappointing with how much it's used in the show. I know that I personally almost always want the mechanics of world building such as this to be elaborated upon sooner or later. Soft magic systems have their place, but I feel as though we should have had some more information on dust by this point. But what do you think? Do you like how dust is utilized in the series? Or would you have had it a different way? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, leave a like on this video if you're so inclined, and subscribe to see more. I would like to thank you for watching, and may you all have a weapon in each hand.